Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the public presentation of the 2026 budget for the Tellico Village POA. I can tell you there's been a record-breaking amount of effort that went into this budget. I've been doing this for 5 years, and I can tell you for the last, I'd say at least 3 years, there's been exponential increase in the quality and effort behind the budget. My first year on the FAC back in the beginning of 21, I learned how the budget was done back then because I asked, I think it was the director of golf at the time about something in his budget, and he says, I have no idea. I've never seen the budget. You'll have to ask accounting. Later that year, I asked him about some anomaly in his financials. He says, I have no idea. I've never seen the financials. We've come a long way since then where directors now own their budgeting. They know every number in their budget. They are responsible for their financials. We've graduated now to doing full business plans for every department. Every director, manager is responsible for their business plan. So we've come a long way, and I just got to give thanks to all the managers and directors for the effort they've put in to this. It's been Herculean because it's, on one hand, it's very new for them. They've never had to do this before in the last couple of years. And it's evolving. We're getting better at it. We're getting more sophisticated. And I think, if you took them aside and took them off the record, they'd say that they're better leaders of their business because of it. Not that they like the amount of time they have to spend on it, but it does tend to lead to better business performance. So with that, today's got two major sections. We're going to first go through the business planning side of it, and then go to the budgeting side that supports the business plan. So Joel's going to walk us through the business plan side, and then Judy's going to walk us through the number side. And we've got about 45 minutes with each of those sections of presentation. And then we can have some open discussion if there's questions, comments, concerns after that. So with that, I will turn it over to Joel.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. My name's Joel Reed. I'm a new member of the board. My background is both education and vocation as an engineer, and then the other half of my vocation has been an operations manager. So what I'm going to be showing you today is what I've been using for decades to great success, things I didn't come up with them. They're things that were given and trained to me, but I can tell you they work. So I gave a brief overview of the balanced scorecard side. There's two sides of this, the balanced scorecard and the PDCA business plan. The balanced scorecard I'm only going to briefly go over again. I think I was a little rushed last October. Won't be rushed today. We're going to take some time. I'm going to show you a lot of information. And the reason you're going to see a lot of information is primarily what you're going to see today. You're going to start seeing it every board meeting starting in January. There'll be 14 different measurements that we're going to be updating every month at our board meeting. So I want you to be comfortable with what you're going to be seeing. We're going to be talking a lot about it. So even though this is the first time you may see it, we're going to try to explain it as best we can. I hope you'll get comfortable with it. Like I said before, I'm an engineer and a manager. I'm not a salesman. These are not, how would you call, flashy slides. They're not sexy, but they're very comprehensive in going over the different strategies. In the past, I think our strategies have primarily just been financially focused. What are our expenses? What's our revenue? What's our continuous improvement? And what's our reserve funding? What you're going to see is a more holistic approach to that. So with that said, let's get started. So today's agenda from the business plan, balanced scorecard and business plan, is just a brief history of the business planning process here at Tellico Village. The second component is, again, going over briefly the balanced scorecard that I went over in October. And then there'll be a more detailed overview of the 2026 TVPOA PDCA business plan. Okay? So just a brief history. So back at this time, almost exactly last year, in this very same room, we had this budget meeting. And I would encourage all of you to go back and watch. At 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 30 seconds, there was an 8.5-minute, very robust, very profound conversation about why we need to have a business plan and not just a budget. At $40 million in revenue and $40 million in expense back then, we said it's imprudent for us to have a business plan. We have to start being more thoughtful and mindful of what we're going to measure beyond just finances. Now, come 2025, what John was just mentioning, much improved. I worked with Chet to come up with a 3-step process for business planning. First, the department SWOTs. Second, business plan development, which had 3 components: the objectives, SMART. You're going to hear that term a lot, by the way. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and trackable. You're going to hear that a lot today. And then, of course, the PDCA slides. We never got to number 3, but we did do some of the other ones. And then, of course, the department budget. So 24 did not have the SWOT and business plan. 25 did. But we did not share that with you last year at the budget meeting. That's changing now. So here we are for 25, getting ready for 26. So now we've moved from a 3-step process to a 5-step process. The first was working with Long Range Planning Action Committee. We came up with the balanced scorecard. The second is the departments doing their SWOTs, again, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The third was developing the budget, which you've heard a lot of, and you will hear a lot from Judy here in just a moment. And then the business plans. And then, of course, where we are today, step 5, and that's presenting it to all of you. Balanced scorecard, business plan, and a budget that supports those. So let's get started with the balanced scorecard and give a brief overview. What is a balanced scorecard? It is a strategic management system that allows an organization to manage strategy and improve performance. It helps communicate to all the employees what the organization is trying to accomplish. It looks at more than just strategic measures. It looks at all strategic measures and not just financial to get a more balanced view of performance. Namely, what are those 4 strategic measures? The customer perspective, the financial perspective, the learning and growth, the internal processes, and the learning and growth. So how does that balanced scorecard help our organization? It focuses on improving processes, resulting in improved efficiency by removing waste. It aligns everybody's work in prioritizing big rocks, or what's most important, to ensure everyone is rowing in the same direction. And it measures and monitors our progress towards those strategic results. I love the sayings, you treasure what you measure, and people react to what you inspect, not what you expect. So let's just give a brief overview again of the balanced scorecard. At the top, you'll see it has our Tellico Village vision and mission. I'm not going to read it. The first of the 4 perspectives of the strategies, the strategic thinking, and at the top of the list is our customers. What are our strategic objectives? Put the customer first, achieve high property owner satisfaction. How are we going to do that? We came up with 3 targets, 3 measures and targets. The first one, establish periodic general customer satisfaction surveys. What is the target? By April 26, we're going to establish and implement a monthly customer satisfaction survey, and then we're going to start reporting on these surveys. You'll notice there isn't a target % of satisfaction at this point. 26 is about establishing a baseline. 27 will have a specific target. Second one, customer experience follow-up survey. So how was your meal? How was your round of golf? How was your visit to the wellness center? Okay. We do have a target there of 85% satisfied. The third one under the customer is the help spot. As many of you know, I've worked with Beth and we've made this much more robust. And you'll see that 85% is the goal we're setting. I think we're running, Beth, about 81. Okay, 81%. So we're going to try to bump that up a little bit. The next category is financial, the ones we typically focused on. This is something we're very comfortable with. Controlling cost and optimizing discretionary revenue. That's something new. When we say discretionary revenue, we want to increase our revenue because you want it, like make our shopping experience better, make our restaurants more accessible, provide what you want so you'll come more frequently. We're going to find different ways to increase our revenue voluntarily. So what are the three measurements? Now you'll see TBD because we're still going to discuss this here. Judy is afterwards, and we haven't voted on it. That'll come into play next week. That's why this says to be determined. But one is making sure our expenses are per the budget. Number two, that we meet our revenue targets, including managing subsidies is a very important point. We're going to be looking at the subsidies and seeing what we can do to help reduce the amount of subsidies we need for our amenities. And then the third is monitor our financial health, and we'll do that by making sure that we are meeting our reserve contribution goals. Our third strategy or area that I was talking about is internal processes. What are our strategic objectives? It's improve operational efficiency, maintain high quality and reliable infrastructure, and innovate amenities and customer service. So we have 4 different measures and targets for this one. We want to identify process improvements, and so Matt is committed to doing a minimum of 3 efficiency studies that identify $50,000 savings. That's $150,000 in efficiency improvements. The second is establishing a preventive maintenance program. So by May of 25, we're going to establish a very robust preventive maintenance program for all assets that are greater than $50,000 and less than a 30-year life. Right, so we're not talking about our roads per se. We're talking about all of our equipment and our assets, our kitchen items, all the big assets. The third measure is innovate discretionary revenue enhancing programs. We're going to be looking at innovating, coming up with new ways or new programs that will excite our residents, and they'll want to come out and visit these new amenities. So these new programs, we're set a target of generating $250,000 in net revenue increase. And the last one, safety is always so important. This is something we haven't been showing you. We're going to set a goal right now at 5.5 incidents, lost time incident rate. It's based on a construction safety one. It's one of the more, how would you say, generous or easy. We don't want to see it hit that number. We're going to try very hard to make sure that we stay below that number and operating safely. The fourth and last one is learning and growth. The strategic objectives in there increase employee skills and empowerment, improve employee satisfaction and retention, and link employees' goals to the scorecard. This one also has 4 different measures and targets. The first being establish an annual employee satisfaction survey. We're currently not doing it. This is going to be established next year. So we'll have an annual survey we have for their employees, and then we're going to report the results, which will of course allow us to establish a baseline, which will give us a target for the next year. So 2026 is starting the surveys, finding out what our baseline satisfaction from our employees are, and then in 27 we can set up a target to hopefully improve employee satisfaction. We want to implement a customer-focused training, having 100% of the employees trained on online by year end and best practices for how to keep the customers happy. Employee retention, we haven't determined the numbers yet. When you get to the PDCA, you'll see a soft target. Matt and I still need to kind of hash that one out a little bit more, but right now it's still to be determined. And the last one is establishing performance reviews linked to the balanced scorecard. Whether you're an hourly employee or whether you're a salaried employee, we want to have everybody's reviews linked to the success of the scorecard. The scorecard, again, is now looking at the whole operation. So we want everyone to be linked to making sure this organization is successful, from making the customer absolutely happy, taking care of our employees, taking care of our assets, and of course doing that while we have very good financial results. So now we're going to get into an area that you haven't seen before. This is the 2026 PDCA business plans. Now the question might be, why is a board member not presenting versus a POA? The reason being is this is something that has never been done by the POA. So this is something that this year I'm going to do it, but under the understanding that the coming years, the POA will be the one giving the PDCA business plan presentations. But I do want to make a point of one thing. This development of this plan wasn't by myself. I had great support from Matt and John Villa. They supported the development of what you're going to see next. Good morning. So, what is a Plan, Do, Check, Act PDCA business plan? It's a continuous improvement process that allows an organization to improve the work that we do. Plan, Do, Check, Act is a 4-step business management method used for business planning, continuous improvement processes, and problem solving. You'll see this continuous loop down here in the bottom left of the slide. And this is otherwise known as the Deming Circle. A lot of people have probably heard of this, but this is what we're talking about as a PDCA. So how does a PDCA help an organization? Well, it does it by having a plan that you design to revise a business process to improve the results. The Do is implementing the plan and testing its performance. The Check assesses the measurements and reports the results. If it falls below plan, you have to determine the root cause. In Act, if successful, you standardize the process. If it's not successful, this is a very key point. If it's not successful, you have to adjust the plan by getting to the root cause, countermeasures, and predict when you'll be back on target. So here we go. This is the 14 PDCAs that support the balanced scorecard and the 14 targets that you saw before. Now, did everybody get a pass out? Everybody's got that? Okay. So what we're going to do is you'll notice on the right side of your pass out, it has initiatives. And you will see that it has it highlighted in yellow, number 1, number 2, number 3. So as I'm going through these PDCAs, you can use this cheat sheet to help know which one I'm talking about, because they'll be that number will be written on the top left-hand corner of each slide. So let's go to the first one. I'm going to call your eyes, and you're going to get used to seeing this. You're going to be seeing this every month. Your eyes will go to the right, top right, that's the plan. Next, the Do. Next, the Check. And then the Act, if necessary, if there's adjustments needed. So this is the very first one, customer satisfaction survey. This is what I was mentioning before. We've not done this before. We're going to establish this in 2026. So we don't have a target yet, so we have to establish a baseline. So how we're going to do this, what's the plan? We have to establish an ad hoc customer service committee. They are going to develop the survey. They're going to mail, and this number is something Matt and I have talked about. We're going to be talking about this a little bit more, but right now we're set on doing at least 50 a month to go to the residents and then report the results at the monthly board meeting. So now I draw your eyes down to the bottom right, which is the Do. So what's going to happen is the board of directors gets a customer satisfaction survey team of volunteers by the first of the year. We're going to have the team develop the survey by March 1st. The team will represent, and I apologize, it should be CS, not CSE. The customer service team presents the survey at the March Town Hall meeting, so you can see what's going to be asked of everyone. And then, come April 1st, we send out the first 50 residents in April, and then for our May board meeting, we're going to show you what the results were. So if I look at the Check, it shows the Gantt chart on matching what you see over the Do. We're going to be tracking this and updating every month. Where are we on the plan? And then when we start in April, you'll see in the top left, that's when you'll start to see the actual percentages that came in. Again, no plan. We're just going to be presenting the actual. Next year, we'll have a plan, and then we report the actual. Moving on to the next one, number 2, customer experience survey. So we're going to use the same customer service team to do both. They're going to develop this ad hoc. This committee will be the same as what we saw in the first quadrant, the first initiative. This committee will create a customer experience survey with planned 85% satisfaction rate. We're going to be setting up these experience surveys for Public Works. How was their visit? Did they fix they fix it right the first time? Food service, golf, recreation, and even the POA office. How is their experience there? So the committee will pick up these surveys monthly. They will summarize the results, and then they'll report these at the monthly board meetings. So what does it do? Again, get the team together by the first of the year, complete the survey by the end of September, present at the town hall meeting on March 13th. Committees collects the surveys and summarizes for the board meeting in April, and then at the April board meeting on April 15th, we'll report the results. Again, here's a Gantt chart of the timeline to put this together, and because we do have a target of 85%, we'll just be populating with the actual results on that top left. And if there are some deviations, if we don't hit our target, we'll start talking about why we didn't hit it. Next one, number 3, HelpSpot. We talked about that earlier. So marketing communication is going to review. The HelpSpot has an 85% satisfaction target, so they're going to actually take the 2025 results and process at the POA directors meeting. They're going to be separating it by department. Now, we're not going to be looking at it on our monthly report. We're going to look at a combined, but for the study to make sure that all the directors can understand where their department is contributing to the current rating. She'll be able to give them a percentage, say maybe this group's at 90%, but another one's at 80 or 75, and they're the ones that really need to kind of think about what they need to do to improve their HelpSpot satisfaction. So when they do this, we're going to get this thing cooking right off and have it in place by April. So what they're going to do is by the 1st or the 5th of January, they'll be able to provide the departments with their satisfaction percent, and the departments with the lowest satisfaction will be the ones asked to determine what they need to do to get better. So communicate this lowest satisfaction on the 6th, directors to share the lowest satisfaction subjects with all their employees. Let employees know where are we lacking, where do we need to improve. And then by February, calculating the HelpSpot results on the first response for the month of January, and then again, sort it by department so they can see how are they doing. And then by February, we're going to start reporting the results for January at the board meeting, and we'll do so every month thereafter. And you'll see that we have an 85% goal down here, so we'll be reporting plan versus actual results every month, and you all be able to see it. So again, this is very much focused on the customers. All what you're seeing is we're going to be getting your feedback, the residents' feedback is going to drive these ratings. Something new, right? So this is the more robust HelpSpot flow that Beth and I put together to get people their response back, or the first response within 1 business day. If a resident answers that they were neutral, unsatisfied, or very unsatisfied, it automatically goes to a POA director, and they need to come back and answer within 2 days. Next one we have is the expense budget. So we just left the customer, now we're into the finances. So this is one we're pretty familiar with. We have our expense budget we have to meet. So look, what's going to happen is we're going to create a monthly planned expense budget report and targets by department in total. What we're going to be presenting here in the board meeting will be by total, but the individual departments will get their own target budgeted, and they need to make sure that they're watching and seeing what their performance is. Each department will share the monthly expense budget with their employees. Matt and I talked about this. It's going to be more of a verbal or a presentation at their employee meetings. It's not going to be everybody's going to get a sheet of paper, right? And then the actual expense budget reports are prepared monthly. The corrective action plans that are developed for significant monthly and or year-to-date deviations will be explained. So how do we do this? Well, before the end of this calendar year, finance needs to prepare these monthly budget sheets for each department. So it not only shows it by department, but by month, what their targets are. The POA directors share the monthly planned expense budget results with the employees. The finance and accounting creates the monthly report showing plan versus actual result on February 13th, and then on the 18th of February, you'll see our first one. You'll see how we performed. This is to be determined, but I did put the rates in here based on what they are at this moment. But whatever we lock in on, those will be adjusted accordingly. So we'll have a planned expense number, and then every month we'll update with the actual. And if their deviation is $10,000 or 10%, then we're going to start asking for why, root cause, and countermeasure. So now the next one, revenue and subsidies. We have those two together, 2 separate graphs, though. Very similar flow to the last one, going through and creating plan revenue and subsidy reduction targets. I won't go over it because it's identical to the other one, but there's two separate graphs. They'll have their revenue target and then their subsidy target. Again, these are still to be determined, but I did use the numbers as we have them today to create the graphs. It'd be plan versus actual tracking again. Next, we have the reserve contribution. So we want to determine the required contribution targets, set the rates to achieve our reserve contribution targets, create monthly plan reserve contribution report, share with employees what our targets are. Actual reserve contribution plan versus actual results will be prepared monthly, and corrective actions if there's a significant deviation. So you'll see the dates over here on the right. I won't read them to you, but this is the number as it stands today for this. For our reserve contributions may change, but we have it set up so we'll be reporting plan versus actual. So I know this is a lot of dry stuff I'm kind of going over right now, but I want you to understand this is the way we're going to be checking our business. We're going to be running it it's very planful. It's a very detailed roadmap on how we're going to get there. And you as a residents will see this in our monthly board meetings. You're going to see, are we hitting our targets or not? And if we're having a significant deviation, you're going to know why and what we're doing to get back on track. This is what we're going to be doing with your money. This is how we're going to be good fiduciaries. This is very important. I know this is a change, but it's the right thing. It's part of our maturation process. So when you go back and you watch where we were 2 years ago at the budget meeting, these are the things that we telegraphed that we're going to do. So stay with me. We're almost there. Now moving into the internal processes. We said there's 4 different targets. The first one is to be more efficient, to do the efficiency studies. We talked about the fact that we're going to do 3 of them for a total of $150,000 in improvement. Money is the byproduct. It's not the driver. You're looking at efficiency and you're looking for waste. To be more efficient should result in reduction in money. So we're going to establish a continuous improvement team to partner with the POA to map out the current processes looking for lean efficiency improvements. We'll determine a minimum of 3 for this study. We'll develop a schedule for conducting these processes. This continuous improvement team will select lean best process / quality circle for performing the efficiency study. If any of you have worked through a quality circle, it's where a group of people get together and they set the target, or they do the analysis on determining the cause for inefficiency and what they're going to do, how they'll modify the process, and then how they check the process to make sure it's successful. And then they'll test these lean processes for improvements, and they'll test for quality, cost, and cycle time improvements. Then they'll check the results as necessary and document what they are, and then track the actual cost improvement savings and reports monthly. So the do is pretty simple when you look down here. The general manager and the board establish a volunteer CI team. We'll do that by the middle of January. This continuous improvement team develops a continuous improvement schedule, which is lean processes, and presents at the March business meeting, at the board meeting. And then the continuous improvement team will update their PDCAs. They're going to make their own plans, their own PDCAs on what they're going to do on how to achieve these objectives, and they'll be doing that by April. So our first one we have targeted to come online on June. The second one of these we hope to have completed by September, and then the last one done by November. Next one, establish a preventive maintenance program. This is something that we've always done preventive maintenance, but it's never been structured and scheduled. So the POA will establish a list of assets that need to have preventive maintenance: buildings, vehicles, equipment, so forth. For a preventive maintenance program, the POA will determine maintenance task, description, and frequency based on the original equipment manufacturer, OEM, their recommended maintenance intervals, and our own maintenance history for each asset. The POA will create a preventive maintenance checklist or matrix to plan and track the actual and unscheduled repairs. The POA ensures they have capable and dedicated teams to do the preventive maintenance, and the POA creates a preventive maintenance standard operation procedures for all the assets. What does that each preventive maintenance interval look like? And then general manager will communicate to all the employees and to the residents. So again, the schedule is listed in the do and the Gantt chart in the bottom left. Innovation, this is something brand new. We're asking the POA to find new things that will drive net revenue improvements. So we're going to ask for an ad hoc team to be established for the POA to innovate discretionary revenue enhancing programs. We want them to brainstorm the multiple discretionary revenue enhancing programs, rank the feasibility of success for each program, including estimated net revenue target for each one, select 4 programs that will meet or exceed $62,500 in net increased revenue, engage directors to assign ad hoc cross-department employees to create PDCAs for the new programs. So a lot of times these innovative ideas is going to require multiple departments to work together. Okay, so maybe golf will partner with restaurants, things of that nature. Implement and test the programs, checking for cost improvements and customer satisfaction. Adjust the program as necessary to standardize or pursue new innovative idea and report the annualized results. Down here is the schedule for it. Over here is the Gantt chart. Up here you'll see we have the check results in place. So once each one comes online, we'll update with its annualized impact. Safety, we talked about it before, pretty straightforward. We want to create a safety program while ensuring all employees have personal protective equipment, create tracking and reporting mechanism for the OSHA cases based on lost time incident report, and then we'll report that monthly. Gantt chart, and then of course a chart up here showing what our actual results are. We're going to start that by March. And then employee satisfaction survey. So this is, we're into the learning and growth part of the scorecard, mostly dedicated to the employees. Establish employee satisfaction team, complete a confidential employee satisfaction survey and present to the board for approval. Conduct employee satisfaction survey for 50% of all full-time employees 3 months apart, and report the results at the board meeting. So you can see the dates down here. Get the team established by the end of January, come up with a survey by the end of March, present to everyone in April, do the first survey in May, and the second one in December. This is our Gantt chart schedule from the bottom left, and then the top you'll see that we have the results. Again, there's no target because we don't know what our baseline is. So this will allow us to establish a baseline in 26, and then in 27 we'll have a hard target for what percentage we want for the employees to be satisfied. Only a couple more to go. Stay with me. Customer focus training. So again, we're going to establish a ad hoc customer focused training team, research the best customer focused online training programs, select the best ones, have the POA directors complete the training and see if it meets our needs. Because it's going to be after, what's going to happen after that, all their direct reports are going, and all the employees will be required to take the training. So then they'll recommend the focused training, and then we're going to start with trying to get 15% of the employees starting in May, and then that will allow us to complete 100% of the employees by the end of the year. We have a schedule over here in the bottom left. And then there's one last thing, and this is something new. We're going to conduct some random surveys starting in September. Now you'll say, well, wait a minute, not all the employees have been trained yet. We're really going to be dependent upon the directors to set a clear message to the associates what is expected for customer focus. So although maybe only half their staff will be training, we'll start doing some random audits to see if these best practices are being put in place. So that way we'll start tracking them and reporting on them in September. Improve employee retention. So we're going to establish a ad hoc food service team. We're going to focus on food service and that team will be about 4 to 6 people plus a facilitator. We're going to ask them to go through a 5P, that stands for the 5 principles of problem solving for high food service turnover, to determine the root cause and countermeasures to lower the full-time equivalent turnover rate to 40%. Matt and I are going to be talking about the number a little more in the future, but that's roughly about the target we're looking at. We'll implement the corrective actions and tests for 3 months and adjust the countermeasures as necessary and test for another 3 months. And then based on the success of that, we'll standardize those countermeasures to maintain lower food service turnover. The reason we're focused on turnover in the food service is most of the turnover and the best practices that we'll develop in food service could spill over to the other departments. So again, there's a team that's put in place. They'll go through a 5P, which is like a root cause and countermeasure. I'll show us a picture of it here in a second. And then we'll go through and start testing it. This is our Gantt chart, and this is our expected result with so we'll be populating it with actual when they become available. this is what a 5P looks like. It's a detailed form that just goes through 5 different steps and requires you to determine root cause and what are the countermeasures. And the last one, align reviews to the scorecard. We want to make sure that we align all employees' annual merit reviews to the balanced scorecard. Explain the balanced scorecard employees and link their evaluations to the results of the scorecard. So the basic steps, get that done by the middle of January, and then explain to all the associates by February how their reviews will be impacted by the success of the balanced scorecard. And just a basic Gantt chart. So before we get into questions, I know that was long. I apologize it was a little dry. It wasn't very flashy or sexy, like I said. But this is very important. It's managing the whole business. We're going to be, the old saying, people react to what you inspect, not what you expect. We'll be inspecting along the way. And I think as dry as it may sound, this is not a punitive process. It's not, yes, it establishes accountability, but the purpose isn't to say we're looking to find poor performers. No, we want to provide absolute clear expectations to everyone what success looks like. If you've had a great day, great month, great year, does anybody know? We want everybody to not meet expectations. We want everybody to exceed expectations. And this will give a tool in place that allows them to be recognized for their outstanding performance. Something that maybe we don't do as much of today. It's maybe more subjective, right? Or it was mostly just cost-based. Now we're saying, hey, let's focus on the customers. Let's focus on our processes. Let's really focus on our employees. They're the greatest asset we have of all. Let's start investing in the employees heavily. Okay? Questions? Yes.
There you go. Thank you. Very nice presentation, by the way. I'm very new to this, so I might be asking questions that you all have answered at previous meetings or what have you. But one of the things that maybe I didn't understand is on the surveys that you're going to be taking about customer or resident satisfaction. You said 50 a month. I mean, aren't there thousands of residents here? So does 50 a month really provide any kind of baseline for you? I mean, aren't there rules about statistically you should have X number in order to be able to get results that would provide a baseline?
Matt, I could take that, or you can take that.
Sure, I can take it, and John may want to jump in, but when you're looking for statistical significance amongst, say, let's call it round numbers, 6,000 households, what we have on track is sending out 50. Don't know that we'll get 50 returned, but if you're getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 500, you're well into the area of statistical significance for customer satisfaction.
I thought you said you were setting out 50.
A month.
Okay, so
600
600
a
for
year.
the year. So you're looking at your baseline as the cumulative effect of all of those.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
I didn't understand that. I thought you were going 50 a month and establishing baselines off of each month. but I
Correct,
guess not.
and just to be clear, this year, and to make clear, we're surveying customer service, okay? So it wouldn't be so general as to say, do you love living in East Tennessee? We're really honing in on, have you had an opportunity to interact with a TVPOA employee? How was your customer experience? What was your perception? Did they follow up? I'm making things up at this point. I think the way Joel and I have talked about it, we're not looking for something in the neighborhood of 25 to 40 questions. In my mind, 10 would be the absolute most, and I think less would be even ideal.
And these are the general surveys, they're not the ones after the service is performed surveys?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's a second survey. So,
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
That's why I want to make sure we're staying on that same topic, okay? Should I continue, or should I wait for others? Okay. The other question I had is, my background is financial and accounting, and so one of the things that I know is very difficult to do is when you have targets for savings, for example, it's very difficult sometimes to be able to monetize them. In other words, sometimes it's an improvement in efficiency that really is just time. It's not necessarily something you can point to as a cost reduction per se, that it's coming off of your income statement. So how do you go about measuring these? Are some of these going to be kind of soft efficiencies, if you will, that will be somewhat subjective in how you count the savings, or how is your accounting going to capture the savings for the different efficiencies or processes that you are targeting?
I'll take a first stab at it. So the financial ones are very hard numbers. They're not soft. The revenue, expense, and the reserve contributions, all of those are hard numbers. The efficiency improvements and the innovation that we're talking about, what you typically do is for the efficiency one, is that you would take the frequency based on the forecasted number of cycles that you're going to do in that process that you just changed, and whatever that reduction, let's say it's 10%, and you do this 100,000 times a year, and the 100,000 times a year is now only going to be needed 90,000 times a year, and based on the people that are performing that process, whether it be labor or materials or overhead, we'll calculate that, and based on that forecasted number, that's how we'll come up with an annualized number.
So it's going to be a post-analysis, correct? It's not going to be
Yes.
something captured within cost centers or anything like that?
That's correct. However, based on whatever we would what we'd be tracking afterwards is to see if we've actually hit those numbers that we were expecting by these efficiency improvements. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to determine what the annualized number is and then report it once it's implemented.
And the analysis of the efficiencies, will it be done by the people who are involved in the processes that are they part of that efficiency?
Yes, it'll be.
So they'll be self-reporting on
Well,
their efficiency?
Well, the team that's going to do it is going to be one of both residents and the employees that are performing that task. So we're going to have some outside eyes in there, mapping out the process and looking for efficiency, kind of some fresh eyes, if you will, and people that are experienced with the efficiency studies. So they'll work in cooperation with the employees.
Okay. And then I guess the last thing is that I couldn't read the chart and I didn't catch whether or not it was actual data or not. Do we have an issue with turnover of employees? Or not finding employees?
I think that point could be argued. So, in our evolving discussions, Joel and I have talked about two different things, because in the industry, they are two very different issues. You've got your regular full-time employees that are not food service, which, if I'm recalling at this point, sits in the neighborhood of a 10% turnover, which
The
doesn't.
non-food service?
In non-food service,
Okay.
which doesn't scare me. Now, I'm speaking full-time. When you get into the food service realm, it's an altogether different animal. And so, to my recollection, we sit, throwing out numbers, but I know for certain, I'm not recalling them at the moment, but something in the neighborhood of 50% for regular part-time employees, and something in the neighborhood of 35 to 40% for regular full-time employees.
That's an annual turnover number?
That is annual, yes.
And do we have any idea of how we compare to a national standard or a regional standard?
I'm told on
Or similar communities even?
Yep, I'm told on a regional basis, for food service in the Knoxville area, you're looking at 40%. So I blended two things for you. I blended regular part-time and regular full-time. If you were to measure it against a regular full-time, we're in the neighborhood of 40%. I suspect even we're less. The regular part-times is the issue where if you blend them together, we would be sitting again higher than the benchmark.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hey, Joel, we have a question online. From David, he said, has these accountability standards been presented to employees and how have they been perceived?
That has not taken place yet.
Not a question, but a thank you for putting this together. I too have a budget background, and I had a lot of questions, but I'm very glad to see all of this, and that there will be some accountability, some visibility, some transparency on the numbers going on in Tellico Village to make things even better here in the community. Thank you.
Joel, you mentioned that you're going to develop multiple ad hoc committees. Are those ad hoc committees in regards to our existing committees that the TVPOA has? And how will those be employee-based committees or employee and resident-based committees? And if so, how will you make this selection of who participates on those committees?
So if, in regards to your first part, whether or not there are existing committees, I'm not aware of committees that pertain directly to this, but if there is one, we'll certainly consider it. In regards to, is it going to be POA employee or resident, it varies per the subject. On some, it's going to be just the POA, and some it may be a couple residents, like the efficiency one, and POA employees working together.
So going back to, you mentioned that you're going to have you're going to have the continuing improvement team, you're going to have innovation team, customer focus, and food services. And those are all ad hoc, as
Right.
well as a committee that is going to develop the actual surveys, and those are ad hoc.
Right.
My question is are those particular ad hoc committees going to be resident or employee only? And when I refer to the existing committees, I'm referring to the TVPOA advisory committees. So are you replacing the advisory committees, or these ad hoc committees are in addition to, is the question?
I'll take the last one first. This is in addition to. It's not
Okay.
replacing. When it comes to efficiency, residents and employees. When it comes to innovation, POA. When it comes to customer survey, that's going to be the residents.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Guess if there's no more questions, we will continue on with the presentation part and get into the actual budget by Judy.
Can I make one quick?
Sure.
Just one quick comment. So I should know offhand, but I don't recall. It's something in the neighborhood of 35 slides, somewhere thereabouts. And it was interesting to me because we kind of went through a rehearsal on this on Monday. And even people who had seen the presentation had questions. And if I had to make a guess, the most common answer from Judy was, I'm getting there. I'm about 2 slides away. So if you possibly could, to the extent that you can, write down your questions. If we don't hit your questions, we're happy to answer them, but I bet you more often than not, based on our previous experience, she's getting there. She goes through it in a very thoughtful and deliberate way. And shooting your hand up at slide 12 to find out what the water rates are, just hang on. We're getting there, I promise you.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here as we walk through the 2026 budget for Tellico Village. This presentation provides a high-level look at where we're headed financially and how we've aligned with the board's guidance and how this plan supports both our current operations and our future priorities. The budget you'll see today was developed collaboratively, guided by direction from the board, built by POA management, and refined through review and support from both the FAC and the Board of Directors. It reflects a shared effort to balance priorities and plan responsibly for the village's future. Everything we do starts with our commitment to this community. The 2026 budget reflects that balancing financial responsibility with investments that preserve quality of life, protect property values, and keep Tellico Village a great place to live. We used the balanced scorecard framework as a guide, focusing on 4 key areas: our customers, financial stewardship, internal processes, and employee development. You'll see elements of each of these pillars reflected throughout the budget. Here's how the 2026 budget stacks up against the parameters set by the board. We achieved the combined $9 million surplus goal. That's roughly $2.7 million from water and sewer and $6.3 million from non-water sewer, including Tenassie. We also maintained the 3% merit pool and met the 10% subsidy reduction across golf, recreation, food service, and marketing. Our operating expenses came in very close to the flat target set for us, about 1% higher than 2025. The small variance reflects a few additions the board requested late in the process. User rates and assessments also stayed within the 3% limit, with the exception of golf making a separate business case for an additional increase to cover new golf cart leases in 2026. So overall, we've hit the key financial goals while keeping expenses and rates aligned with the board's guidance. The key assumptions and non-financial indicators help frame the 2026 budget. We're projecting roughly 6,900 assessment-paying properties and just over 114,000 golf rounds, with about 86% member play. While property growth is leveling off and we near build-out, member participation across our amenities remains strong and consistent, providing a solid foundation for operations. Membership numbers are expected to remain steady for recreation. We are forecasting 123 new home starts for ACC and 188 tank installations to be completed, recognizing that new construction will be gradually slowing as we approach build-out. Many of the 2026 tank installations are tied to building permits issued in previous years. We're also forecasting steady water consumption levels for 2026, just under 500 million gallons for the year. Utility purchase rates from LUB and TAS reflect planned increases, keeping our utility projections realistic and sustainable. This slide highlights 3 key assumptions built into both the 2026 budget and our 5-year cash flow. First, the elevated water storage tank. This project evaluation is still underway, but based on current data, it appears that existing system pressures may be adequate without constructing an elevated tank. The 2026 capital plan therefore assumes a ground-level tank, reducing the estimated cost from $8.5 million to $2.5 million. Second, the main pump station grant. The cash flow model assumes full receipt of the $2 million TDEC grant by the end of 2026, though the actual timing will depend on reimbursement schedules tied to the project progress and approvals. Both of these assumptions will continue to be monitored closely as the project moves forward. And finally, the cash flow assumes proceeds from the CCI land sales will be available to pay off the remaining $1 million principal balance due on the CCI loan in 2026. This slide highlights our planned community investments for 2026, focusing on maintaining and improving existing infrastructure and amenities. It's important to note that we have not budgeted for any new amenities during this time frame. Our financial focus remains on completing the Tenassie rebuild and advancing critical TAP and infrastructure projects that protect the village's long-term sustainability. Our balanced approach is designed to give residents predictability, fewer surprises, less financial risk, and confidence in how we plan for the future. It supports what residents care about most: reliable services, high-quality amenities, and long-term affordability. At the same time, we're advancing continuous improvement and transparency through stronger financial reporting and better cost visibility across departments. Here's the big picture comparison of the 2026 budget and the 2025 budget. The 2026 plan is designed to achieve the board's target of a $9 million combined surplus while bringing Tenassie operations back online. Reopening Tenassie represents a major investment in the community, restoring a key amenity, rebuilding food service capacity, and positioning the operation for long-term success. And please note that the surplus values exclude depreciation since that's a non-cash item. This slide shows how our operational revenues are spread across the departments. We stayed within the board's guidance, no assessment or user fee increases beyond the 3% unless there's a clear business case. Where you see increases above that, they're tied to stronger participation, not rate changes. Food service revenue is projected to climb about 17% as Tenassie reopens. On the utility side, water revenue dips slightly with the planned rate reductions, and tank revenue continues to level off as new installations slow down. The board's direction was to maintain a 3% merit pool, and our budget reflects that commitment. This pool was calculated based on our existing staff levels at the time the budget was prepared. Overall, total salaries and wages are increasing about 6% compared to last year, primarily due to the additional hiring needed for the reopening of Tenassie. The benefits category includes payroll taxes, workers' compensation, group insurance, and retirement contributions, with group insurance held to a 7% increase. This slide shows our operating expenses excluding Tenassie, without Tenassie. We are about 1% greater than the 2025 budget excluding depreciation. The biggest variance is in maintenance, where we found opportunities to tighten in some areas while still maintaining a strong and proactive maintenance program. Depreciation continues to be a significant non-cash expense that will grow as major construction projects are completed and placed in service. One of the key board objectives for 2026 was a 10% reduction in amenity subsidies across golf, recreation, food service, and marketing. With our planned budget, we're meeting that goal on a consolidated basis, looking at all of these together. For marketing, it's important to note that the agreed-upon measure of subsidy is revenue less village marketing expense rather than the full departmental total. Using that definition, the subsidy improved by about $68,000 or roughly 9%. The portion shown here is revenue less village marketing expense, and that reflects a 5% increase, which the department absorbed and exceeded through other efficiencies, looking at their entire budget. This calculation excludes Tenassie operations and startup costs, but it does incorporate some expected revenue shifts among our restaurants once Tenassie reopens. That's part of why the food service subsidy appears higher for 2026. We anticipated this transition year would show some movement as operations realign and Tenassie returns. I'll walk you through that next. This slide breaks down the food service subsidy figures with and without Tenassie to show how the pieces fit together. We are planning for a total 2026 food service subsidy of about $909,000. This includes Tenassie's startup costs and partial year operational subsidy. After removing Tenassie's $163,000 subsidy and the $26,000 in May startup training wages, there remains a $720,000 subsidy for Tokwa, the Yacht Club, and Kahiti. That $720,000 includes the short-term impact of customers shifting to Tenassie, which is about $393,000 in reduced gross margin. Per industry experience, existing restaurants see a reduction in short-term revenues from the startup of a new nearby restaurant of about 10 to 35%. By adding that gross margin back, the adjusted food service subsidy for 2026 would be $327,000, or a 20% improvement from 2025. As the other restaurants are rebranded and marketed in the coming years, we expect those reductions to ease and the overall food service subsidy to continue improving. This is a good slide to come back and revisit later if you'd like to see how the food service subsidy pieces fit together. This slide looks beyond 2026 to show how Tenacity performance once it's fully operational. For the first half of 2026, Tenacity is projected to run a subsidy of about $317,000, which reflects pre-opening and startup costs. Once open, operations improve quickly, showing a $153,000 surplus from July through December of 2026, and another $222,000 surplus in the first half of 2027. Taken together, that's a $375,000 surplus for a full 12-month operational cycle, more than offsetting the initial startup costs. This outlook shows that after the transition year, Tenacity is expected to stand on its own and strengthen food service overall, helping us stabilize subsidies across all restaurants moving into 2027 and beyond. This slide shows how our capital spending and reserve funding align through 2030. You'll see the Tenacity rebuild completed in 2026 and the TAP project spending phased over the next 5 years, consistent with our project schedule. The non-TAP capital line reflects anticipated spending by department directors. 2026 is budgeted, while the later years serve as a forecast. The reserve study line represents assets that have reached the end of their useful life and remain funded for future replacement, reduced where those replacements are already planned in the capital line. This is essentially a set-aside rather than actual spending. The middle section of this slide shows the expected timing of grant reimbursements for the main pump station and principal payments on long-term debt. We're planning, as I've mentioned, a $9 million contribution to reserves in 2026 and continuing that level throughout the forecast period. The bottom line shows projected year-end reserve balances compared to the fully funded levels in the reserve study. It demonstrates our commitment to long-term stability, with reserves reaching and maintaining full funding from 2026 through 2030, keeping us well-positioned for both current projects and future needs. These cash flow slides include a lot of information, so it's worth pulling them from the website later and looking them over carefully. They provide a great overall picture of how the POA's reserves and capital plan work together over time. This slide focuses on the water and sewer side. Starting in 2025, we separated the funding from the general reserves so we can better track and manage these operations on their own. What's shown here combines the operating surpluses from water and sewer services with the balance in the WESAF fund, which begins 2026 with about $2.9 million. Those funds stay dedicated to TAP projects that are shown together here for clarity. You'll notice the higher funding levels in 2026 and 2027. That's because we've been setting money aside for our upcoming infrastructure projects. The timing has shifted as we review engineering options, so those reserves have built up a bit before being used. As the projects move forward, we'll draw them down, reaching a low point of about 50% in 2029, and then begin to rebuild. Our goal is to keep rate-driven contributions steady while continuing to move towards 100% funding once the major projects are complete. Overall, this is a steady plan that projects flexibility and keeps us on track for the long term. This slide highlights the non-water sewer portion of our 5-year reserve cash flow. focused on reinvestment in the village's general assets like amenities, buildings, vehicles, and common property. Surpluses from these operations help fund the Tenassi completion, non-tap capital projects, and the reserve study set-asides from aging assets. Our 2026 contribution is about $6.3 million, and after Tenassi is complete, reserve levels strengthen steadily, reaching roughly 105% of full funding by 2030. This level of funding gives us a healthy cushion to manage unexpected repairs or cost changes without disrupting planned projects. Together with the Water Sewer Reserve Plan, it reflects a responsible, forward-looking approach that keeps village assets strong and well-supported for the long term. Throughout this period, our focus remains on reinvesting in existing assets rather than adding new amenities, ensuring that available funds support the completion of Tenassi, non-tap capital priorities, and ongoing infrastructure renewal. And again, I know these slides are kind of beefy, so pausing to look at those online is worth doing. Here's a summary of our planned capital projects for 2026. The larger projects are shown separately and include the planned TAP spending and the completion of the Tenassi rebuild. Together, those major projects account for roughly $12 million of the total. Smaller projects across other areas total about $2.9 million, bringing the full 2026 capital budget, including carryovers, to just under $15 million. Beyond this plan, we've identified about $2,545,000 on the bottom of the slide in reserve study assets that have reached the end of their useful life but are not scheduled for replacement in 2026. This reinforces how we continue to use the budget, cash flow plan, and the reserve study together, ensuring we meet today's priorities while keeping sight of future replacement needs. Like any plan, this budget carries both risks and opportunities. On the risk side, we're watching inflation, project cost changes, and the potential for unplanned asset failures. The $312 million in zero-funded assets identified in our 2026 reserve study also remind us how important it is to keep building reserves and maintaining consistent funding. Some uncertainty remains as we finalize the engineering approaches and cost estimates for the TAP projects. That process naturally brings both risk and opportunity as we look for the most practical and cost-effective solutions. On the opportunity side, we're pursuing efficiency savings, exploring new revenue ideas beyond rate increases, and continuing to benefit from community donations that enhance our facilities and programs, recognizing that both help us stay proactive and balanced as we move forward. Okay, now we're going to get into looking at some of the rates proposed in this budget. Assessments remain within the board's guidance, no more than a 3% increase without justification. We continue to balance affordability with the funding needed to sustain operations and reserves. So we're looking at a $5.45 increase per month, $65.40 annually. Golf operations include a 3% rate increase plus $1.50 per round for golf carts. A business case supports this adjustment as our current lease expires in 2026 and the new rate aligns with the cost of providing carts with actual usage. We anticipate entering into a new lease next year, so the related costs are included in golf operations rather than presented as a separate capital request to purchase the carts on our capital schedule. Recreation remains one of our most valued amenities, and the 2026 budget supports program continuity, staff retention, and equipment upgrades while maintaining affordability for residents. A 3% rate increase is included, consistent with our overall budget guidance and necessary to sustain service levels and program quality. Dock and RV rates include a 3% increase for 2026, continuing our gradual adjustments to align with maintenance and replacement needs. These revenues help offset long-term infrastructure costs for the facilities that directly benefit from them. ACC permit activity remains steady, and no fee adjustments are planned for 2026. We'll continue to evaluate service costs over time to make sure they stay aligned with the effort required. And now, the slide everybody wants to see. This slide highlights our proposed water and sewer rates for 2026. The cost of purchased water is expected to increase by an average of about 12% beginning January the 1st. We've managed operating costs within budget guidance and adjusted maintenance where needed without affecting service reliability. We used a bottom-up approach to set these proposed rates, starting with the net surplus needed to support our 5-year cash flow plan and reserve study, then layering in operating costs and the cost of water and sewer services to reach the required gross revenue target. The rate structure based on recent consumption data is designed to meet that goal. This surplus need remains tied to the TAP project forecasts, which are still being validated. At the bottom of the slide, utility tank installation fees remain unchanged for 2026 following review. This slide shows how a typical residential water and sewer bill changes from 2025 to 2026. Using our proposed rate model, the 2026 bills are projected to show meaningful reductions, about 17% at the minimum bill level of 2,000 gallons and up to nearly 60% at higher usage levels such as 50,000 gallons. The sustainability of these reductions depends on the TAP project scope and timeline holding true to the assumptions built into our forecast, and we'll continue to monitor those factors closely as the analysis progresses. We strive to keep rates affordable for residents while maintaining the long-term financial health of the water and sewer system. This comparison shows that after our planned adjustments, Tellico Village rates will be well below those charged by LUB for customers living outside the city of Loudoun. Depending on usage, the typical residential bill inside the village is projected to be 25% to nearly 50% lower than those outside the city. It's worth noting that higher volumes for Loudoun resident users, such as irrigators, may install separate meters to manage their sewer charges. Tellico Village sewer billing caps at 5,000 gallons, while LUB's has no upper limit. Overall, this demonstrates that after the planned rate adjustments, Tellico Village residents will see substantially lower water and sewer bills than those served by LUB outside the city of Loudoun, providing meaningful affordability for our utility customers. So this is my final slide. This budget takes a balanced approach. It keeps services stronger today while planning responsibly for what's ahead. It follows the board's guidance, maintains affordability for residents, and reflects a lot of thoughtful work across departments to align priorities. We've planned carefully to keep our long-term needs in view while managing near-term realities, and we'll continue monitoring our assumptions as projects move forward. Overall, it's a steady plan that supports the village's quality of life and keeps us positioned for the future. That's all I have.
Okay. Very good. I guess we'll open it up now for comments from the audience or online.
I got one.
Welcome, Pat.
Thank you very much.
You can pull that mic up a little bit.
Yeah, I am. I've got to get my notepad here first before it falls down. And then I lift this up. And I make sure the green light is on and I don't stand too close. Not my first rodeo. Anyway, My name is Pat White. I live at 304 Skiatook Circle in Coyote, and we're approaching 18 years of being here. Served on the board from 2018 through 2023 with a lot of you folks here. And during that time, I think from 2021 up to maybe it was 2020 to 2023, I used to have a flapping arm tirade every single year regarding dock fees. And not being able to give that up, I'm going to do it again. So I told John I'm going to be a little over 3 minutes. I'm going to go as fast as I can because I can't give you all the details that I need on my proposal for what I'm about to say in less than 3 minutes. And if you're familiar with the docks in Tellico Village, the history was that the boat owners went to the POA, Cooper, back in the day, in the 80s, and said, we want docks. And Cooper said, can't have docks. These people formed a dock captains committee, went back to the POA and arranged for dock purchases, and there was a policy written on the POA, and when Carla was on the board with me, we revoked that policy because the policy said it's the only amenity in Tellico Village that's ever done this. If the users of the amenity come up with the money, the POA will loan you the money at the current interest rate. We will take 90% of that money in the POA general revenues and leave 10% of that money for maintenance that the dock owners will use to maintain the docks. That went on until that loan was paid off. So, when that loan was paid off, the policy stayed in effect, but then, as I just said, that policy was eliminated by the board somewhere in 22, I think. And at that point, the Marine Advisory Committee was formed. So there's never been a subsidy ever for docks by the POA. Never a subsidy. 100% has always been paid by the boat slip lessees with a positive net revenue to expenses. There are 28 docks today. Since 2020, the POA has added 3 docks of 38 slips each for 114 additional slips. We've added 30, and I say we, the POA has added 30 PWC slips and replaced 100% of all outdated PWC slips. And if you note, prior to the MAC being formed, Public Works took those floating slips to the dump in Loudon and pushed them off a truck. And there was a gentleman that on the MAC decided he could get on eBay and sell them, and then he began to sell them and directed those funds directly back to the POA. The Yacht Club had a wave attenuator problem back in 2020, 21, and the estimated cost from the engineering company was a little over $1 million to fix it. And if you don't understand what a wave attenuator, the Courtesy dock has a system of boards and steel underneath it to keep the waves off the property and the existing boats in the docks. That was put in at a cost savings of approximately $600,000. Tenaci's wave attenuator was replaced last year with a cost savings of approximately $500,000. We moved in-dock to added space for O and P docks. We moved the no-wake buoys, which was quite expensive, replaced the rusted cables with stainless steel, replaced floats, added fire extinguishers, added the dock ladders and safety floats, which is the donut things tied to a rope you throw out. The MAC then initiated dive inspections, extended the Tenaci Basin parking, changed the lighting to reduce the night light pollution, upgraded the Tenaci Lagoon when we purchased the rights from CCI. We upgraded the gas docks, and we've improved maintenance. All while generating, check this out, all while generating $990,030 over the last 5 years from that positive net revenue. This year, with the current budget that we've looked at here, when we dive in the numbers and Judy can bring them up or correct me if I'm wrong. We've got approximately $400,000 in positive net revenue generated by the fees collected from the leases. We've heard comparisons during this time when I used to flap my arms and scream and holler while on the board that we compare to existing surrounding docks, but we don't. All of those docks are full service. We have 2 boats per slip versus 1. We have majority covered. We have the majority uncovered, while the majority are covered outside of Tellico Village. We have no lifts versus lifts. And we have 1 gas dock that is somewhat full service compared to a full service dock with concierge service. There is no comparison between the full service docks and our neighborhood convenience docks. So, let me pull out my documentation here, and we won't even review that. Being said, the philosophy of Tellico Village with population growth means more users, means nearer to the subsidy reduction for everyone. And to talk about something Joel said earlier, which I firmly agree in, the philosophy of Tellico Village for all of these years has been to reduce the amount of subsidies as close to zero as you possibly can. So I'm laying this in the board's lap. You have the opportunity to show the property owners that what you say is fact. Eliminate and/or adjust the dock rate increase to cover expenses only, not to generate more revenue, because you can. And that's my point. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Penny Mansko. I'm going to jump on what Pat was talking about because my question was on the docks and RV storage. First, I want to say thank you for taking the time to put together the videos. My husband and I took the time to watch all of the videos. They were very informative on a high level, getting into detail, and now I better understand what a department is versus a cost center. So thank you for taking the time to do that. So on the docks and RV storage, I took a look at the pie chart from this year on the subsidies that were for all the different departments and cost centers for the subsidy, and for docks and RV storage, it was at 0.3%. And maybe you can't answer this, but for next year, is that 0.3% subsidy expected to continue?
We have not prepared the pie chart yet.
Right.
You want to turn your mic on?
I don't want to speak without having done that analysis yet. So if you'll just give us some time to come forward with that, we will. But we would have to look at the capital plan together with the budget that is for the dock and RV department. And then those together is the piece that will go. The pie chart represents the operating budget and the capital piece together. So.
Okay, I'm looking at just the docks and RV storage at 0.3%.
Okay.
Okay, you probably can't answer that.
And I cannot, and
Right.
it's got the gas docks included in that department as well.
And that's another question. I do believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the revenue increase, I addressed this as a question from the videos. The gas dock or the gas piece of it is one piece of the revenue, which to me is separate than the billing rates for the leases. Is that correct?
It is, I mean, it all rolls up to the department results, but yes, we have dock rental rates, and then we have the gas, the rate we charge and the rate that we pay.
Okay, so that should be a totally separate thing than the leasing rates for the docks, correct?
Yes, we maintain that revenue separately, if that's,
Well,
am
but
I
it-
understanding the question?
It was all shown as revenue,
It all rolls
both
up.
combined. Yeah, it all rolls up,
into
so,
the dock, but within the dock department, we have separate revenue accounts that account for each of those pieces. So it's,
okay.
we
In-
can identify the separate components of it.
Okay,
even
so
though
in
it
the
does roll
detail-
up. Yes, the
okay.
detail would allow us to break it down.
Okay, so in your slides a few minutes ago, on the dock and RV storage, which are combined, it was talking about long-term maintenance for the docks and that's what was driving the 3% increase. Did I, make sure I heard
Well-
that correctly?
Yeah, my comment was that these revenues help offset long-term infrastructure costs for the facilities that directly benefit from them. But that would also be the case for there's no discussion on this chart of the gas dock part.
Right.
But the margin that we develop on gas sales would likewise go for any, like, I believe for 2026, there's a tank upgrade or replacement.
But
for the
that's
gas
totally
dock. So
separate
that's
than the,
separate.
but that's, okay, I'm
Yeah,
not even
so-
going to address that.
So,
So what, can you provide just maybe some detail of what that long-term maintenance is driving that 3% dock and RV storage rate increase?
that will be something that we'll have to cover when we move forward with the budget after it's adopted and the capital plan and
Okay, because that's
Everybody else
driving the 3% rate increase here. So, as a boat owner and many other boat owners, I've got, again, and I addressed this last year, again, have a problem with the rates going up again for the docks, and I'm not sure what the maintenance is, because as a boat owner, I don't see any maintenance being done on the docks.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I can assure you there is maintenance being done on the docks, and let me give you some examples. Occasionally, Tellico Village has new boat owners, okay?
Yes.
And occasionally, those new boat owners come into their slip a little rough.
Yep, they sure do.
And so
I've seen it.
We have a program, and I don't have it committed to memory, but we replace, as a matter of habit, rub and rail replacements, okay? So when you come in rough, you're gonna hit the rubs and the rails. We replace those on a regular basis. On a capital basis, just for example, this year, we are redoing the second set of anchors out here at the yacht club, because as you can well understand, if your dock comes unattached from the anchor and the whole thing starts just floating away from you, which I've seen happen, some of us have all seen that happen, that is a bad, bad day for us. So we did the first half, I think it's the first half, it may have been the first third this year, and the second half, or it could be the second third, in 2026 as well. We also went through the process last year of redoing one segment of the, forget the name of the term, but it's the light post and the electrical connections. We did all of those, and so I think maybe part of the disconnect here, she's illustrating an operational budget. The big cost associated, aside from the rub and rail replacement, which is $180,000 to $200,000 a year, we're talking about the capital elements of things that we have planned that the residents expect that may or may not be getting caught here. And I don't have Pat's figures in front of me, but I think one of the disconnects may simply be, if you look at it purely on an operational basis, I would agree. Now, I may get his hands waving here in just a second.
Have to stand up again. You're going down a very dangerous road here.
Look, I'm happy to do it.
So I
sorry.
asked you to please reconsider, again, increasing the docks and RV storage by the 3%. I see docks totally separate from the RV storage, two separate things. So please reconsider that, because you've also got maybe a 0.3%. You've also got a 0.3% subsidy going in for the docks and the RV storage. So I feel as a dock owner or leasee, I'm being double charged. That's what I feel like is happening. So I would, again, please take a look at this to reconsider, because I think some of those costs that you're addressing, Matt, are already in that budget. I'm just looking at the $31,292 revenue increase for 2026 for the docks and RV storage. So please reconsider that. Thank you.
I've actually got a quick question for the last two speakers, so don't go away. I understand that what we're charging for gasoline is considerably lower than any other place on the lake, and we've got non-village people coming in and almost sucking the tank dry because the gas is cheap. And I think there's some consideration going on of getting new hardware so that we could charge village residents one rate and we could charge non-village residents another rate. As I was listening to you last too, I mean, if I understand you right, you're saying docks have a negative subsidy and it's the only amenity that's there, and why is that fair? Would you feel it made sense to treat gas sales differently if we can make more voluntary revenue there, let that flow into the budget, and consider just the dock rates separately? That's my question to you two.
You know, let me clear up something here that Matt brought up and Judy brought up and you brought up as well. Looking at the last 5 years, just the last 5 years, we have installed, do you remember how many docks I said we installed? 3. All of them were close to $1 million. We put in 2 wave attenuators. Both of them were in excess of $400,000. We have replaced most of the steel cables with stainless steel. We have replaced floats. All that stuff I just brought in has gone into that number that I gave you. The excess revenue versus expense with buying docks and wave attenuators and gas pumps and floats is $990,000 that the slip owners have contributed to the POA with normal maintenance. So if you look at these numbers that I've generated and had an opportunity to review, the numbers show that over the last 2 years, we have generated less positive net revenue than prior to 2019. Why is that? Question. Why is that? Because we haven't bought docks and wave attenuators and all of that stuff and replaced gas pumps. We're sitting on right now $990,000. Good for us. It went into reserves, and as a board member, we needed those reserves. But we need to be sending a message to the Tellico Village property owners, as Joel talked about. Our goal is to net out 0 subsidy. You're never going to eliminate a golf subsidy, perhaps a restaurant subsidy, perhaps a wellness center subsidy, but you've never had a subsidy in slips. And we're going up 3% again to cover costs that we're already covering over the last 5 years at $1 million over. And this year, you're going to do it at almost $400,000 over revenue versus expense. And you're still going up 3%. And yes, we do have maintenance because we beat things. As boaters, we beat things up. I dug a guy. Oh, this was hilarious. It was a new boater, and he pulled into the old dock, and the wind was blowing, and he got caught between the gate and the dock and couldn't get out, and his motor was on the land. Hilarious. That's the kind of stuff we do as boaters, but we pay for that and generate $990,000 in excess revenue over the last 5 years. So, I mean, just as a boater, as a golfer, I will be a golfer, a restaurant user, a wellness center user. I will continue to be a boater, but you're hitting me and 990 of us with a 3% increase because I can't go anywhere else. And if I go somewhere else, I'm going to pay for a full service dock, not a double position dock, not a dock with a roof over the head, not one that I can pull my boat out and not get scum all over the bottom. I will have a gas station. Mine's in Tenasseee, but I have to go to the yacht club and back 6 miles. You follow? That's a neighborhood dock. That's what we have. God bless you and Tellico Village for allowing me to have it. I love it. It is fabulous. But the 3% is out of line.
I think he's got a point. And maybe that's something that lands on your scorecard somewhere for some feedback and growth and potential. But that's not why I stood up here to talk. I did, and I agree, I thought the videos were fantastic. I watched the videos. I thought they were very helpful for a precursor to the information you guys are covering here, so thank you for that. I'm excited about Tenasseee opening. I don't spend much money here in the restaurants. Food bothers me, but I love to go out to eat, love to have a beverage, and I love it when things are priced properly. So I hope we hit that after we get everything operational. But during Skylar's presentation, I couldn't help but hear the $900,000 subsidy. So to my knowledge, we own everything. We're going to own Tenassi, we own Tokwa, we own Kahidi. And did I hear, I'm assuming that you're going to shut everything down and open, just like do a full blast at Tenassi when you open Tenassi? Is that the objective?
No, we'll be doing soft openings in June.
Okay.
The
Okay.
month of June is dedicated for soft openings.
Okay. I have worked at a restaurant, but I've never run a restaurant. Okay, so I know in 2023, I think it was February, that long-range planning told everybody that we were fine with the restaurant space we had. That was before Tenassi burnt down. Tenassi burnt down, and we all decided, or 20 people decided, to build it back bigger. Okay, so now we've got Tenassi, and I am excited about it being operational and being open. I have a concern as a resident that if all the focus is to Tenassi because they can make all this money, we're sitting here with these other restaurants that are empty and unused. And one of the best marketing pieces about anything, a golf course or a restaurant especially, is if they're busy. They're busy and people are like, oh my God, why can't I get in? That must be great, I need to go there. So I hope it's going to be part of your launch plan to make sure we keep Tokwa busy, because I think I've been at the food service meetings where they've struggled, but they've never been able to recapture breakfast at Tokwa. And that might be because you dropped it for a while and then you couldn't get those people back. So that has to be part of the calculus, I would hope, for everybody in whatever we do to launch Tenassi. So again, I'm not a big restaurant user. I hope to become a restaurant user because I hope you guys do whatever it is you need to do to get me to come in, drink, and eat at our facilities here. So with that said, just thank you for listening to me.
Okay, I'm back with probably some pretty basic kinds of questions, financially speaking, because I'm just trying to absorb all of the numbers that we saw. And there were lots of numbers, so I appreciate all the hard work that went behind them. Couple of things. During the course of the slides, I noticed that a lot of the comparisons were 2026 budget versus 2025 budget. And yet then other slides were about 2025, what we estimated we'd finish as, and then 2026 budget. So I became a little bit confused as to why some comparisons were budget versus budget, and why some comparisons were against what we expect 2025 to finish as and what 2026 budget is. I just found that difficult to absorb going back and forth. And I know from private work that the budgets are only as good as the time that you put them in and at that time. So we typically, at least in private companies, we didn't go back to a previous budget as a comparison, but actually took the 2020, the number we were currently in that year, our current projections against the new budget. I was just wondering if there's something I'm missing in terms of understanding why that comparison was made.
Basically, we had a great deal of discussion back in July about guidance and what would be the jumping off point. I too have always had the jumping off point be the forecast for the year, right? We would
Yeah.
typically, it'd be the 8+4, 8 months of actual, 4 months of forecast would be the comparison. But this organization has not ever engaged in true forecasting. So we're getting there, we're starting to do it. We did a little bit last year, we did some forecasting this year, but we don't, until the SAGE was implemented, we didn't have a tool to actually facilitate a forecast. So it was all just spreadsheets and managers going through for the first time guessing what they think they might do for the rest of the year. That will get better, and I assume that in the next couple of years we'll actually be able to use the forecast as a jumping off point. But in July, we had to make a decision of what to be the comparison, and we decided to go with adopted 25 budget to adopted 26 budget as the comparison. You know, it just was a clean set of numbers that we could use.
Okay.
May I add one more thing? So while that was the the ruler for our guidance measure. I will say that the development of the 26 budget numbers, while we had the goal of trying to remain flat with our expenses versus the 25 budget, most of those numbers that were developed for 2026 gave great consideration to actual 2026 numbers to date when developing the numbers that were dropped in for 2026. It was just the ruler compared 25 budget to 26, but those 26 numbers are very invested in actual information for 2025.
That said, then, maybe could you speak to where are we going to finish in 2025 versus our budget?
Well, you'll see me talk about that again next week. Next Wednesday.
Could you-
Or if you come tomorrow, we're ahead of budget right now. Primarily, maintenance expenses. We're doing better against budget for our salaries and wages based on some of our headcount reductions. It's a combination of things that are improving our bottom line in terms of operations. And then we have a lot of things contributing to our bottom line surplus improvements that are not operational. We're doing better in interest income because we're not spending as rapidly as we had projected when we developed the budget, but on our big projects. The WESAF, which is a non-cash contribution to our profit and loss. When we spend money from the WESAF account on those projects, that's generating so far this year a little over $500,000 worth of spending on those projects. And then we also have gains on property sales, POA lots, and used equipment. So all of those things are things that have improved our position. We also have a little bit of we had a little bit of a miss on our cost of sales for the utility tank installation. So our gross profit is better than what was budgeted in 2025. And I feel like we get better at that every year. We kind of learn as we see what's creating variances actually throughout the course of a year, then we can correct and make some of those adjustments necessary, refine what goes into the next year's budget. So we have a relatively new management staff that's been here in place for the last couple of years. And so we're learning from all of these things that create variances year to year. And I feel very good about the numbers that have been projected for 2026, with the exception of, like I say, we're all doing the best we can for the restaurants, the food service piece of a brand-new restaurant. And I feel like 25 was probably a little better projection than 24 was because, again, food service was brought in-house for the first time. The 23 budget was us making the best estimations that we could for what 24 would be. Then 25 was like, well, okay, now we have close to a full year to base that on. But now here, just when you've got that figured out, we're going to throw in a new restaurant. So that ball has continued to roll, and we'll continue to learn from that. So
I understand.
thank you.
Leading off of that then a little potentially is the reserve forecast that you have going forward into future years. If forecasting hasn't been something you all have concentrated on a regular basis, then I guess one of my concerns would be in looking at the forecasts of those reserves, how confident are you about achieving that? And maybe a second part of that question, I also have done nonprofit work, so I'm familiar with how their accounting might work. When you have reserves, a lot of times those are also restricted to a specific purpose. So when you talk about the reserves that are behind our water needs versus the non-water needs, is there risk associated with one versus the other because you can't move reserves from one or designated for one to the other? Is that a risk? So I guess there's two questions. How confident are you about forecasting these reserves? And then the second part of it, are these reserves restricted in terms of their purpose?
They are not restricted in the sense of a legal definition like you're used to for a nonprofit.
Okay.
They are board restricted.
Okay.
So, and we are committed to maintaining that separation where we can use general reserves to help our water sewer side, but we don't, short of like a short-term loan, we would not try to use the water sewer surpluses to support building something new for on the general side, short of like, say, an emergency. But yeah, the project volatility of not knowing, we've not yet determined what's the final best engineering solution to some of these WESAF projects yet. So that continues to be probably the greatest risk and the greatest opportunity for things looking wildly different in the future. So we're just using the best estimations that we have right now, and that has been with engineers and with our project manager and Matt and PSAC and the board weighing in and finance committee weighing in, just to I mean, we're not fortune tellers. We're just trying to make the most informed estimations that we can, which is what a forecast is.
Sure.
So that remains the largest source of risk on both sides, risk and opportunity. In terms of just operational contributions, we can dial that in pretty well with our budget. And then the forecast, again, is not what's adopted by the board. They adopt the budget for the 1 year, and then we project out to the future. So we've just, trying to be conservative. What they will approve is the budget for the year, which is a $9 million goal for the subsidy, surplus. The most conservative thing we can do is say we will try to produce that same number again going into the future. That kind of neutralizes, we're not putting large, growth projections in there. We're not, that requires us to at least keep costs under control and manage to consistent rates for the community. So that's the approach we've taken.
Okay, and just one last question.
Sure.
Hits me more personally, I guess. On our water bills, in the comparison you showed about what the average bill was this last year versus what it's projected to potentially be in the future, and you have a fairly significant reduction, yes? Did I read that correctly? Okay.
Right there's us, 25 to 26,
Right.
and then the next one is compared
Did
to
the
LD.
25 number include the extra $80 we were
No,
paying?
and up there it says excluding WESAF.
I didn't understand what the WESAF
Oh,
was.
the water sewer infrastructure fee, that's the
Yeah,
$80. So it's not included in 25 or 26. But
Yeah.
we curtailed that $80 in June, through the end of June, and then so July it was gone.
And perhaps the slides were going too fast for me, but, so what's the overall reason for the decrease?
Primarily, it's related to we went from an $8.5 million estimation for the elevated water tank to now hoping and assuming that we will be able to, the number that's been put into the 5-year forecast is $2.5 million for that project. And I'm not going to be the best person to address the
So
the
it's
TAP
the
plan,
result of the
so
exclusion of that.
it's-
Well, also, the sewage tank was taken out, that was 8 million. So there were some things that would make an adjustment on water and sewer, so that reduced the amount significantly of what we needed in the future.
Okay, I guess I would have looked at that as a capital item and not an expense item that was going to hit us every month. I'm sorry.
Well, we're trying to produce a surplus on the bottom that will be available to cover the cost of those capital projects.
Okay,
So that's why we've projected what we think we need at the
Got it.
bottom, after we've covered all of our operational costs, to pay for those capital projects.
so then bottom line, I suppose, going back to just a couple of seconds ago, if it turns out that we do wind up having to spend more, then these water bills are not, in fact, what's going to happen.
These rates are only sustainable if the assumptions that we put into the model hold true. So that's all we can do. Our aim was to try to make the water and sewer rates more affordable for the community, and we want to do that, but we also have to balance that with the sustainability and the reliability of the infrastructure. So we're doing the best we can for you guys now, and we'll make every effort to pursue that as we can, so.
Just a
Thank you
comment.
for all of your work. Thank
Make
you.
one comment. Water rates have, at least for the last couple of years, been based on a 5-year cash flow projection, because we got to have the cash to do any infrastructure improvement, because As we've said many times, we can't borrow money to any great extent. We can get small loans. But, so we have to have the cash up front if we're going to do something like change our water tank or upgrade our pump station. So it's always based on the 5-year projection. So this year, we dramatically decreased that 5-year cash flow projection, which allowed us to reduce the water rates. Now, again, the risk is that, you know, we get further down the path and those cash flow projections go up. It's going to require more cash for the 5-year projection. But we don't know that right now, so it resulted in a significant decrease. Now, comment on your question about what is our confidence in these reserve numbers. You know, as we talked about ad nauseum for the last 4 years, is the reserves are there to prevent the need for special assessments, right? Main purpose, because we could either accumulate it over time and put it into reserves, or we can just come to you and say, hey, we need $10,000 because we didn't plan properly. So we obviously have chosen to put it in reserves ahead of time in case we need it. The biggest risk in my mind personally is the 300+ million of zero funded assets. So a good example this year, and Wells can confirm that, I think it was at Cherokee Country Club, lost all of their greens due to a mishap with, what was it, some chemical they used? Yeah, whatever it was, but they lost essentially all their greens, and now they're looking at multi-millions of dollars to replace them.
And that type of thing isn't insured?
No, they don't, and where's now, this is not a funded reserve item in ours. If we lose our greens and have to replace them, it's not funded in our reserve. So you got those kind of risks that we can't easily quantify. You know, part of the financial model, as you, or standard, as you're probably aware, is you got to be able to quantify it, and what's the other qualifier? It's estimable. Yeah, so it has to be reasonably estimable. So we got to say, well, there's a 32% probability we'll lose our greens, and it's going to cost on average $500,000 per green before we could actually start reserving for it. And we don't have those two numbers with any specificity to do that. So that was a decision that was made, is where it's not going to be a funded reserve. So that's just one example of some of the risks. But I think, you know, the reserve study helps us cover all those estimable risks that we can, reserve for.
Just maybe one last comment. It's obvious that an awful lot of work has gone into this, and I certainly appreciate it. But I do enjoy hearing from the board in terms of the presentation rather than the POA. It would be my personal. You guys are the ultimate deciding body. I'd like to hear from you year after year, more so than the POA. I think their contributions, as they have done here today, is wonderful, but I love hearing you guys talk first. Thank you.
John Olson, Tenassie. Want to applaud the board for coming up with water rates that I feel are more realistic. But I want to issue one caution. I've looked at the type of things. I hope we got enough in the $28. I was coming up with more like 31. So anyways, that's a different thing. The other thing, looking at the docks, and this comes into reserves, and I don't know if I fully understand how all the funds transfer back and forth, but docks and attenuator are going to be, or are expected to accommodate something like $13 million in reserve funding in the next 30 years. That would be $400,000 a year annualized. So I don't know if somebody expects docks to pay that or where it comes from. But obviously, I think that would hit increase in dock fees as somehow we're funding the reserve.
I'd like to echo what everybody has brought to you in regards to the work that you guys have done on preparing this material, as well as the 11 videos that were put together. I had the pleasure of reviewing 9 of them with my coffee this morning. And I have one question in regards to the food services one that maybe, Simon, you can help me out with. Maybe I didn't have enough in that coffee this morning. It seemed to me that there was a line item referencing an increase of $249,000 for Tenassi associated with an increase, showing an increase of $249,000 associated with banking. I'm like, I don't understand how banking is making that much of a difference in the budget, but the overall subsidy and cost that you're showing for the Tenassi coming online was $428,000, and of that, a large portion of it was $249,000. And I went back and looked at it and I thought, I don't understand how banking can have that much of an impact. So maybe it was not enough coffee, but it was a significant number that I was trying to understand associated with that cost.
I don't have the numbers for food service in particular to know the banking numbers that you're speaking of to validate that you're picking up numbers that I know what you're talking about. But that's credit card fees. So in the past, the credit card fees, I don't believe have been adequately, we're seeing that, we're experiencing that every month when we look at what we budgeted in '24 versus what's happening in 2025, we're under-reporting it. We're over budget. Primarily in golf, the number of people that are playing or paying for a daily round of golf, they're all using their credit cards, and we didn't properly analyze that. So this is one of those instances where for the 2026 budget, we actually went in and looked at the experience rate of credit card fees for the month versus revenue for the month. And we used that comparison on all the departments that use credit cards and have now tried to, as accurately as we can, estimate what the credit card fees are going to be. You'll see that we are, I wish I knew the number off the top of my head, we're several thousands of dollars, like $80,000, $90,000 over budget in bank charges this year versus what was budgeted. So don't hold me to that number.
So you think it has to do with credit card fees?
Yes, it's credit card
Okay.
fees.
Because
Yes.
that's
Yes.
significant, right?
Right, and we have frequent conversations about this with the FAC, about, what can we do to,
Recoup.
recoup that, mitigate that damage. Are we past, there's some instances where that fee is being incorporated into rates, and there's instances where it's not, but it's all being managed in the goals of each departmental budget. It's not directly rolled into the rate as a separate charge, but it's managed from top to bottom in terms of what we, desire to do with the subsidy or the surplus for that department. The questions that have come up are, well, is there something we can do to try to get a package deal for our credit card rates, negotiate based on volume? Well, the problem is that each of our point of sales programs, they're all separate. We have one for golf, we have one for rec, we have one for food service. And those point of sales providers are associated with a credit card company that they insist you use. So we have limited ability to negotiate rates like on a volume discount kind of basis. So we're looking for other opportunities to manage those fees. What can we do to encourage? Everybody wants to use their credit card or your watch, your phone. Nobody really carries cash around nowadays, but we're trying to figure out ways that we can, and the system improvements are an opportunity for the future. It's not today, but if we could get that CRM update in place that has the page where people can go in and put money on their account, cash, check, then you can go spend that money, and the POA nor the customer are having to pay for credit card fees if you're using a house account money. So we're looking for opportunities like that. Right now, all we really have is like maybe a gift card. If you went and wrote a check and bought a gift card, and then you used your gift card to pay for things, as opposed to, your credit card, that saves you money, that saves the POA money. That's where we are right now.
And that's a concern, especially when we're going to Toast, and you have the handhelds with a credit card right there being easier. So we anticipate those charges to go up a little bit. And she was relating, we're looking at some system improvements, once we get the new database system in, and we have money in the budget next year to look at that and hopefully implement by 2027, that we'll have something that will help reduce some of those costs in that implementation. But it's a huge fee, and not just with us, but everybody. Those credit card fees are not, especially if you use a rewards credit card, it typically has an extra % charge. So, yeah.
Well, as a point of reference, I just look it up, the credit card fees are going up 60% year over year. We got added revenue for Tenacity, but the fees themselves are going up because of the rewards cards. Everybody sees the ads, get 3% cash back. Well, who's paying for that 3%? It's not the card holder, it's the merchant pays that 3% that they give back to you. So those fees continue to rise.
Well, and again, that was just a number that jumped out and you went, whoa, wait a minute, that's almost half of what you're saying your bringing online cost is
Yeah,
going to be.
it's-
So that was significant. On the same topic, in regards to food services, though, so there were a couple of changes that I heard in your video, Simon. Number one, that you're looking at enhancing the experience at the yacht club so that became more of an exclusive dinner club environment, but also to restrict TVRA, formerly known as HOA, gift card usage, new villager usage of gift cards only to the yacht club. And I guess my question was, what analysis was done that would actually lead you to believe that restricting gift card usage was going to improve customer experience, customer satisfaction, and overall operating expense and/or subsidies? Oh, sorry, Simon. Sorry.
I'm Skylar.
I'm
Nice to
sorry,
meet you.
Skylar. I'm looking at him.
So the gift cards you're referring to are the promotional gift cards that we give out to New Villager Golf, HOA Golf, MGA Golf. So the thought process behind restricting the usage of them here at the yacht club is that when the MGA gets a $30 gift card and they go to Kahiti and they go turn it in to use it, at Kahiti you can buy a pitcher of beer and a hot dog for $30 and be out the door, right? Here at the yacht club, if you come redeem it, $30 will get you one entree, and you're going to be forced to have to spend more money, hopefully, because you're going to come with a couple, right? So the thought process is redeeming them here only will increase revenue because you're going to spend more than $30 here.
So, but the gift cards you're referring to are gift cards that these clubs and organizations have already paid for. Their revenue that you received, guaranteed, already taken care of. So what you're assuming is that we're going to continue to purchase those gift cards to give out to people who will only use them at the yacht club. What happens when we do not prepay for those gift cards, which reduces your overall income, which was guaranteed income at one time, because of the fact that these people can now only use them at one high-end restaurant?
That's a good point, but like I said, it's the promotional gift cards that we give at a discounted rate.
What's the difference between the ones that
So
TVRA purchases?
a normal gift card, you can use anywhere in the village. I'm specifically talking about the promotional gift cards that we give at a discounted rate to these organizations.
So basically, the 10% discount that you give to TBRA to purchase $2,000 to $3,000 a year that we give away, that promote our members coming and utilizing your restaurant services, our restaurant services, will no longer be accepted at all restaurants, only at the yacht club.
Yes, some of them, yes.
Well, there's either some
Yeah.
or, it's either
Correct.
all or none, because if I pay for them in advance, and you only give me a discount on anything that I purchase of gift cards at $2,500 increments, you give me a 10% discount, you're saying that all those ones that I paid $2,500 in advance for, you won't take anywhere except for at the yacht club?
Correct.
Okay, I don't understand how that's going to benefit the yacht club or the customer experience here in Tellico Village, or the relationship that you've had for 30 years with New Villagers, TVRA, and the other clubs and organizations. So I would think that it would be something that you as a board would want to look at, number one, not only from a relationship standpoint with the clubs and organizations who have all along always supported the restaurant services and, actually, done a lot to promote our clubs and organizations using restaurant services to now restrict what we're trying to do and continuing to promote restaurant services by saying the only place that you can use this is at the yacht club. Doesn't seem like a good customer service experience. So, and the last question that I have in regards to the water and sewer proposed budget is, one of the risks that it appears was not mentioned here is your budget is based on the assumption that some of these proposed infrastructure changes, for instance, I believe I heard that the proposed budget is based on not a elevated water storage tank that would address the water pressure issues amongst residents in both areas and all areas of the village, to a non-elevated water storage tank that may or may not address our water pressure issues. So if a analysis is done and finds that the proposed budgeted water storage tank will not meet the requirements to fulfill and address all of our water pressure and water storage issues, how will that impact the fact that you only have 2 point whatever in your budget when maybe the real solution is a lot higher?
You won't have enough money.
Yeah, that's my concern. That might be the concern.
So, good morning, I'm Mike Harrington, I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. Can you go back to the consolidated cash flow chart? We, the FAC and the board, had a similar concern about lowering the water rates and creating a situation whereby we didn't have sufficient cash, particularly if you looked at water sewer in 29, where our reserve is only 50%. As was discussed earlier, based on board directive, money from water sewer, reserves from water sewer cannot be used to pay for general reserves. But general reserve excess can be used to pay for water and sewer needs. So when you look at the consolidated, we're saying that we're going to be always in or above 100% overall reserves against the reserve study. If you take the about $6 million risk that sits there for the difference between the elevated water tank solution as identified by Jacobs today and the $2.5 million we have budgeted, if worst case scenario, all of that had to get paid for, that 100% level would go down $6 million. So our cash, just roughly, would be about $23 million against the need for 29. That still keeps us above a 70% level. Why is 70% important? Based on the recommendation of the consultants that do the reserve study, if you maintain a reserve level in excess of 70%, our goal is 100 because of unreserved, zero reserve assets and other things. But you can be at 70% with a low risk of requiring an assessment of your community. So we see that as a little bit of a cushion as it relates to this decision being made. It'll be somewhere potentially between the 2.5 and the 8 based on the solution that's being suggested, but we won't know till next year. But our fear was having a yo-yo effect on rates, bring them down this year and take them back up in the future, which, if you know my experience on the FAC, that is not what we strived for in any of our objectives. And after having a few cold sweat conversations with myself in the middle of the night, we became comfortable, or let me phrase that, I became comfortable that we have adequate cushion in order for that worst-case scenario to occur, and therefore not having a yo-yo effect on our rates. The big driver of future rates, frankly, beyond what happens with those projects, and they're all subject to change in the future, is the cost of water provided to us by LUB, which we can't control that.
David Taylor, live in Milagro. I tried to follow Matt's advice and write down questions and keep quiet. Very nice presentation, by the way, from both Joel and Judy. This is very helpful. So I've got three, I hope, short questions. I think you'll get a very high percentage of the village being happy about what you showed about water rates. Not rocket science to say that. Has anyone compared that set of water rates with what would be allowed if the PUC ends up regulating us? To me, that would be a prudent thing to do, be useful information, whether or not they do, and there is a risk that they could. Has anybody looked at that? It could be worthwhile. Second question, Judy, you don't have to bounce the slides for this, I don't think, but in talking about Tanasi in various places, you had a number in 4 million to complete the clubhouse, and there was a mention later about subsidy for June and July. And the question that occurred to me was, what is the all-in cost of Tanasi, and does it include those two things? Are they on top of what we've been told was all-in before?
Are we talking about the building cost or the
The whole thing.
the operating costs?
The whole thing. It burned down. We're paying to put a new facility there. What the total cost to us in the end, what is it? And does it, subparts of that, you mentioned the 4 million to complete the clubhouse and the June, July subsidy. It's like, is that in the total number, or are those on top?
The June, July subsidy. Now you're talking about operations. Yeah, I think you're mixing some operations
I
and
could be.
capital together. So these numbers were strictly operational, nothing to do with the
Okay, so
building plan.
leave that out.
Okay, so you're wanting to know what the all-in, we've got a total budget right now of 11,750,000. And
Okay.
so that's all we know right now, because estimates were put together a year ago, 2 years ago. Some of these are ongoing estimates. And as time goes on, we get improved estimates, and some of those costs are higher.
Mm-hmm.
We've been challenged to do every kind of value engineering and take advantage of every opportunity to keep those costs down. But that, and, with tariffs in play, that all kind of remains to be seen, whether we would actually have to make hard decisions to scale back on what we're gonna have, or try to find great, like I say, opportunities to offset those costs in other ways. But that's where we stand right now. We're doing the best we can to predict the future, but that's.
So we don't know
We don't
the
know.
all-in number yet. Does that 11 million and
No,
something?
as of now, from when the numbers projected, we are under budget.
Okay.
We're under budget, but like he says, there's a lot of things that can happen as we order kitchen equipment that's gotta come from overseas and things like that, that could be adjusted and could affect that price, but we are under budget as of today.
Does that 11 million include the 4 million to complete the clubhouse that you mentioned, or is that on top of the 11? So that's in the 11? Okay, I sort of assumed that, but I didn't want to be wrong. And then a last question, and you might have, our finance committee people may have partly answered this, but I was curious why on reserves, we were exceeding 100% level between 26 and 29, and I wanted to be sure I understood, do the reserve numbers we're talking about include or not include water sewer reserve since that's segregated?
I've got it all three ways. So this slide is the consolidated view, everything all together. Just wanted to be able to show the big picture.
So water sewer's
Yeah,
in
water
there?
sewer, water
Okay.
sewer is right here by itself.
Okay,
This is just water and sewer. And this balance right here includes a predicted $2.9 million of what's going to be left in the WESAF account by the time we do a little more spending in November and December of this year. So that 13 includes almost 3 million of remaining WESAF balance. So, but this is just water and sewer,
Okay.
all by itself. And yeah, this one is non-water sewer. Everything else, with the exception of our water and sewer.
and then
So-
there's another slide that puts the two together?
That's this one.
That one, okay. I just
So,
want to be
and
sure
I-
I was reading that right.
Yeah, and I hope you'll, go online and pull the presentation and study these, because I know this is not the kind of thing that I can flash up and be, telling you about it for 2 or
Yeah.
3 minutes, and you're like, oh, totally understand that. So, please do study
When-
it more, and then, you know where to find me.
When
if you
I
have
can't,
questions,
when I
right?
can't sleep, I know what
Yeah.
to do now.
Mary Gaddy, I live in Tenasseee. Regarding the toast system that's going to be implemented in the restaurants, I'm looking at you, Ed, because I think you might be able to answer the question. Will it have the capability of being able to process like a debit card? If trying to look at these credit card charges that we're incurring and trying to be creative and how can we incentivize people to not use a credit card essentially. If we were able to put money into a prepaid account and then just use that, I'll call it a debit card, that would eliminate then the charge for the credit card.
We're hoping that in the future. That's one of our goals in the future for
Okay.
the new system. We'd hope that you'll do that with Toast, with food services, with everything, recreation, golf. We're
Okay.
hoping to have, water bills, everything that you'd be able to pay from a central point. There's gonna be a lot of challenges to get there. It may take a couple of years to get there. But, yeah, that is one of the goals we're looking at, how to recreate that. But right now, on a debit card, if you use debit card, you still get a charge for a debit card.
Yeah, I just used the word debit card. I was
Yeah.
not really a true debit card, but like your Teleco Village card.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
prepay
Yeah.
account
Yeah.
sort of thing. Okay.
That's a question, is
Yeah.
I don't know that those handhelds would accommodate using a Teleco Village gift card to, that's,
That is something we'll have to check into.
yeah,
but
that's an
but-
unknown, that's a
yeah.
question mark.
Okay.
That's- Yeah.
Because like in golf, because that one did catch my eye when I saw Casey's presentation, that there was a rather large amount of money that golf operations has to pay because of the credit card charges. And I'm started thinking, well, was there consideration given to just passing through that 3.5% charge if a person uses a credit card? Villagers can put money into a prepaid account. Maybe this would drive or encourage people to put money onto their prepaid account so that they're not incurring the credit card charge. So,
And I know in golf, for a very large purchase, they'll tell you there's a 3% charge if it's like over a certain amount. And then like when you go to pay your, I'm unlimited golf.
yes, I
When I
am
go to
too.
pay that, they say, hey, better to pay the check, otherwise you gotta
Yep.
charge you 3%.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so making people aware of that is probably a good marketing thing we should
Yeah,
do.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
Judy, can you go to slide 19, please? What's the difference between non-tap capital and reserve study set-asides?
Okay, so the assets that are included on this second line, non-tap capital, these are the requests that the directors intend to, that are included in our actual capital plan for 2026. These are the projects that they intend to bring to the board to spend in 2026 if approved. The numbers down here include, so we have our reserve study that includes all of the assets and the estimated time when they will reach the end of their useful life and imminently need to be replaced. So many of the assets that are here were included in this number, and it was a bigger number. For 2026, I believe the total in the reserve study for assets that would have reached the end, some of them have far reached the end of their useful life. Some of them are 30 years old. It was like $4.4 million. So some of those assets are included in this number that we are planning for sure to ask to replace them in 2026. This number represents all of the assets that are well beyond the end of their useful life that are not planned for replacement in 2026. So we're not actually, what I said when I was given the presentation, this is not money we actually plan to spend in 2026, but we're sort of setting it aside. We don't want that balance carrying forward down here and making it look like it's available to cover our water sewer projects and our other spending, and then we'll spend it. And when those assets need to be replaced, we no longer have the money. So this is just more or less a set aside. It's not actual cash spending. We're just saying this is what we really have in free available cash to consider for all of our spending needs.
But you're using it in the calculations, right? So you've totaled those up to say it's 9 million.
Yes, but
And
these are not included on the capital spending schedule. This is the cash flow is different than the
No, I understand
budget
that.
spending.
But
Okay.
when you look at our bottom line number, is that 2.5 million in there?
No,
Or is it taken away?
it's out of this total. This is the balance that's available for future spending on projects. We're saying this needs to be set aside. We don't want to spend this out of this balance and then not have it when those assets need to be replaced the next year. So it would be 1647 plus 2545 in the bank, but we're just saying, please don't plan to spend that extra 2.5 over here and think you've got extra cash available for projects when we will imminently need that money. That's how the reserve study and the cash flow end up working together.
Joel, would a real-world example help?
Yes.
All right. So when we do the reserve study, we talk about the fact, and the reserve study consultant will tell you, the moment you approve it, it's wrong, right? Because I'm taking, for instance, a truck, and I'm assigning a 10-year asset life to it, okay? And so I'm making a reserve contribution for the replacement of that. So let's say the reserve study says for all of your assets, say even the truck, I'm to set aside $40,000 over 10 years, okay? And then I get to preparing the budget and I go, you know what? I've saved up the money, but that truck's not due. The mileage isn't there, it's not ready. So I've saved the money for it, and I know that asset has got to be replaced, it's just not ripe this year. What I think Judy is intending to do and recognize is that asset is ripe, you've saved money for the contribution, it's just not in line 2. There are just some things that vary between the reserve study and what the directors will propose. And to her point is, you can't, because you don't replace that truck the year it's due, you can't forget about the fact that that truck has had money saved for it, and at some point, it's going to get replaced. So what she's attempting to reconcile is the inherent difference between the capital schedule and what the reserve study says. And if you're going to have some reserve study discipline, you've got to recognize the fact that there are things that may not get proposed for replacement, but they're absolutely still due someday.
So, yeah, to Matt's example is if that truck, we say, well, we can get another year out of it, and we ignore that line reserve study set aside, that $40,000 would literally go away, and we would no longer have it in reserves if we didn't have that extra line in there. We had this discussion as we're going through it, is how do you account for the difference between what our directors foresee. Again, nobody has perfect clarity out to 2030 of what they're going to replace and equipment-wise, which is why it trails off significantly, but in reality, it's not going to go down to $900,000. That was the only way to reconcile it, so that savings that we've built up doesn't just magically poof go away, and we no longer have savings. That went through Wells's capital requests. I can't tell you how many pieces of equipment that were way past its useful life, but he said, I can get another year or two out of it. You know, we can stretch it, so we're not hitting capital with, you know, what would have been $6 million this year when we normally run 3 million, just because we've got stuff past their useful life. But some of our maintenance on some of these things have allowed us to go beyond the useful life. So anyways, it's, you know, it's very complicated when you start to think about reality of, you know, looking out more than just 1 year and how you handle this stuff.
I think it clicked for me when Steve Schneider said, the reserve study's not correct. It's not intended to be. It's directionally accurate. Well, the way you reconcile what the directors request and the fact that the reserve study is only directionally accurate, you got to account for what are the directors asking for, and what does the reserve study at some point recognize those assets are going to come due someday. You can't just let that money drop off and assume because it's not replaced in the year when you estimated that somehow the asset left.
Right. Well, and that's what the consultant told us when he met with us 3 years ago, is that almost every number in that reserve study is going to be wrong, right? They're going to estimate useful life of, in this case, a 10-year truck, but, you know, we've got 20 trucks, and we're going to replace some at 6 years, and we're going to replace some at 12 years, right? And it's going to, some are going to cost $35,000, and some are going to cost $50,000. So every number is wrong, but you put them all together, and they tend to balance each other out. That's why it's directionally correct. But to try to put weight, you know, any significant weight on any individual number, you can't do.
Matt, could you look at that set-aside line as a segregated reserve account?
Sure. Could look at it
Maybe that
that way.
makes it easier to understand.
Yep.
I'm going to say that out loud so the people in the, David is asking, could we consider that line as being in a separate reserve account set aside? Segregated. And there we go.
Yeah, you'd have to then reconcile all the capital requests, which bucket does it hit? But,
Judy, there's a question online from Chris Hofer. He says, how much is it going to cost to run Tenacity per year operating budget? I don't know if you have that or not.
I do not have an annual, all I know is the subsidy that is predicted for this year for Tenacity, which was, I believe, 163,000. If you net, I don't have my calculator, if you add the 317 to the 153, net those together. Oh, do we have? Oh, right here, yeah, 163, it was 163. That's the subsidy for just Tenacity by itself, excluding these extra hiring costs that we're going to hire a little more labor in at Toqua and the Yacht Club during the month of May. And then that also, as we discussed, does not factor in the revenue shift from the other restaurants. But in any event, 163 is the number that directly relates to Tenacity.
right. And as we get into a full year look at it, you know, 27 being a full year, it is a surplus of several $100,000 potentially, as opposed to just looking at a subsidy or operating cost. And again, you know, short term, it's a spike, right? You got a startup cost, and there's nothing you can do about that. You got to start it up. And unfortunately, a lot of the startup costs are operating costs, are not capital, so we can't spread them out, because small wares, you know, dishes, silverware, pots and pans, all that stuff is operating cost, and it's like, probably have to replace dishes on a regular basis. I would imagine, Skylar, right, every month you probably order another box of plates because they break. That's why you don't capitalize it, and it's just an ongoing operating cost. Any other questions online or in person?
I just have a clarification question on slide 27, where you talk about what the water, it's like examples of. Wait, 28, yeah. So you have examples of the water bill there, and you say for 2,000 gallons, it would be $28. If you go back a slide to 27, that $28 looks like it's a rate per thousand, so it would be double that if it was actually, the water bill was for 2,000. So do you see what I'm saying, though? Because the way that's listed is, it looks like it's a cost per thousand, and it's really not. It's really a cost up to 2,000, right? So I just wanted to clarify that, so nobody was confused by that that's not, you don't double that. Those per thousand rates don't start till after 2,000 gallons.
Correct. That's the service charge, minimum charge, if you will, yep. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we will wrap it up. Appreciate everybody's input and participation here and all the effort that's gone into this. It's gets better every year.